So yesterday we did one part of metallurgy. We're going to complete that today. We will be going through the rest of the topic, and if you have any questions, you can stop and ask me. So we were able to discuss the process how gangue is separated from the mineral, and then once the gangue is separated from the mineral, then the metal is extracted from the ore. And in this process, the metal cation is to be reduced. And how exactly that is done, we'll go through it. So it's extraction of metals, and that's extraction of reactive metals. The metals at the top of the reactivity series are highly reactive. The reactive decreases down the series. So we already know that metals which are at the top of the series are more reactive than the ones that are at the bottom. We went through that chart wherein we saw that there are some metals that are more reactive, that they react with water itself, and there are metals that react with other reagents like oxygen, and then there are metals that react with only aqua regia like gold and platinum. So at the top of the series, you have more reactive more reactive metals, and as and when you go down the series, you have elements that are difficult to react. And that is the reason behind that is quite simple to understand. The higher the valency available, the more the reactivity of the element is gonna be there. The lower the valency available, the less they are gonna react. So we already know that potassium, sodium, and aluminum are reactive metals, and they have the large capacity to form cations by losing all the electrons that are there in their outermost shell. So reactive metals that react vigorously with dilute acid to give hydrogen gas is an example of that. You can also have highly reactive metals that burn by reacting with oxygen at the room temperature. A good example of that is sodium, and their extraction is done by electrolytic method. So metals sodium, calcium, and magnesium are obtained by electrolysis of their chloride salt. So sodium, calcium, and magnesium are naturally found as a chloride salt, like sodium chloride and calcium chloride and magnesium chloride. In order to get these metals separate from their chlorides, what we do is we conduct electrolysis of their molten form, in which we have the cathode deposits the metal gets deposited on the cathode, and chlorine gas is what is liberated. So the reactions are very simple. We see that sodium loses an electron and becomes sodium, and chlorine gains an electron, and it gets oxidized. Now we're going to see how aluminium is obtained from the ore bauxite. So the ore from which aluminium is found is called bauxite. And from that, we need to get aluminium out. Now, aluminium's symbol is Al. We all know that. Atomic number is 13. It's clear. The electronic configuration is 283, and the valency is 3. Now, because aluminium is highly reactive, we don't get it in nature in free state. It is one of the most abundant elements that is available in the Earth's crust after oxygen and silicon. And aluminium is extracted from its ore bauxite. So the ore's name is bauxite, and bauxite's chemical formula is Al2O3 NH2O. So we need Al. We just need Al. That is what we want. But we need to separate it from the deposited water molecules, the nitrogen, and the oxygen that is there in the ore. So it contains 30% to 70% of Al2O3, that is alumina, and the rest is gangue. The gangue is made up of sand, silica, iron oxide, and everything. So Al2O3 is alumina, is what is the most important part that we need from the ore of bauxite. The first thing that is done is the concentration of the bauxite ore. What do you mean by concentration of the bauxite ore? So the concentration of the bauxite ore basically means that the gangue is separated, and bauxite is all the impurities that are present are removed. Okay, so they are done either by Bayer's method or Hall's method. There are two methods, both are leaching processes, and it's one method is the Bayer's method, and the other method is called the Hall's method. Now, the main ore of aluminium has silica, ferric oxide, and titanium oxide, and these are the impurities that are present. The first thing that we need to do is the last thing that we need to do is the alumina that needs to be separated is done by calcination. So in the Bayer's process, the first thing that is done is that the ore is grounded into a ball mill. So you understand what is grounding, right? It's like grinded very finely, and then they get leached by heating with caustic soda at 140 to 150 degrees Celsius for 2 to 8 hours in a digester. So a digester is basically a tank which has concentrated caustic soda, and that caustic soda is mixed with the uh, grinded बॉक्साइट ओर. सो ग्राइंडर मतलब हम पिसा हुआ बॉक्साइट ओर के साथ सो कॉस्टिक सोडा को मिक्स करते हैं एक टैंक के अंदर. क्योंकि एल्यूमिनियम ऑक्साइड एम्फोटेरिक है, तो वो जो है वो सोडियम हाइड्रोक्साइड के सोल्यूशन से रिएक्ट करके वाटर सोल्यूबल सोडियम एल्यूमिनेट बनाता है. So what basically is done that you from bauxite you leach it and you get something that's a sodium aluminate. So you see the formula here. You see bauxite, you see sodium hydroxide, which is caustic soda, and then what you get is sodium aluminate and water is separated. Now you have something that is sodium aluminate. Now whatever iron is there in the gang, it doesn't get dissolved, so it is separated by filtration. But the silica gets dissolved and it forms a soluble sodium silicate. Now the sodium aluminate that you have, which is in liquid form, it is diluted by adding water and it is cooled to 50 degrees. So what they do is whatever liquid they had, which is the sodium aluminate, excuse me, it gets mixed with water and then it is cooled, which means it is cooled as in the temperature is lowered to 50 degrees Celsius. You should remember that it was heated at a very high temperature of 140 to 150 degrees centigrade. So from 140 to 150 degrees centigrade, it is now reduced to 50 degrees centigrade. So what happens is sodium aluminate plus water gives you sodium hydroxide and aluminium hydroxide. So you sodium aluminate and in water, they interact with each other and sodium hydroxide is separated. And what you get now is aluminium hydroxide ka precipitation. What is precipitation? The thing that gets added at the top. Now this is the Bayer's process. The difference in the Hall's process is that the ore is not grinded, it is powdered. And then it is leached by heating with the aqueous sodium carbonate. So rather than using sodium hydroxide, now they are using sodium carbonate. And rather than grinding, now they have powdered the ore. The insoluble impurities are filtered out and then the filtrate is warmed and neutralized by passing carbon dioxide gas through it. So carbon dioxide gas is very cold. So what they do is, in order to neutralize it, after the filtrate is warm, they put carbon dioxide and thus precipitation of aluminum hydroxide happens. So you have the formula here. You have you have bauxite ore, and bauxite ore is added with sodium carbonate in an aqueous solution, which gives you sodium aluminate again. So even in the Bayer's process, we got sodium aluminate. You can see that here, and even here you get sodium aluminate. Carbon dioxide is released and water. Now this sodium aluminate is again mixed with more water and carbon dioxide gas is added to it, through which you have a precipitation of aluminium hydroxide. So in both processes, we got aluminium hydroxide. In Bayer's process also, we got aluminium hydroxide and sodium hydroxide was released. And in Hall's process also, we got aluminium hydroxide and sodium carbonate is released. This precipitate, which is obtained in both, is filtered, washed, dried, and then calcined by heating at 1000 degrees centigrade to obtain alumina. So whatever, as soon as we got aluminium hydroxide, what we do is we filter it, we wash it, we dry it, and then we calcine it. So how do we calcine it? We heat it at 1000 degrees, and that is how we get alumina. Now, alumina is not aluminium. Alumina is again, has oxygen in it. So we don't want alumina, we want aluminium. Now, how exactly is alumina converted into aluminium is what happens in the next step. Before I start the next step, any questions, Yash? Anyone, someone has joined. So any questions, let me know.
No, sir.
Okay. Now we're coming to the electrolytic reduction of alumina. So before we do this, if you have ever seen, the periodic table, you would have seen what is the melting point of aluminium. And you would have also seen what is the boiling point of aluminium. Aluminium has a very high melting point of more than 2000 degrees and a very high boiling point of more than 4000 degrees. So we need a particular tank that can ensure that we can extract aluminium. And how is that done? We use a steel tank which has a graphite lining. So even though alumina has a melting point of 2000 degrees Celsius, graphite even has a higher melting point of around 4400, 4300 degrees Celsius. So we have a better element that is used to line the tank. And this lining that is done, that actually works as a cathode. You all know what is a cathode? So you have a graphite lining that is working as a cathode, and you have rods of graphite that is working as an anode. You add two things, cryolite and fluorspar, which are added so that the melting point gets lowered of alumina to 1000 degrees Celsius, and so that it can easily melt. When the when the current is passed on the cathode, aluminum gets deposited on the cathode. We all know what is the cathode. The lining is the cathode. And then molten aluminum, because it is heavy than the electrolyte, it gets deposited at the bottom. And that is how you get aluminum out. And whatever oxygen was there, that is released at the anode. So it's simple that there is a reduction of 3 electrons from aluminum, and you get aluminum. And in the anode reaction, you have addition of 4 electrons to the oxygen. Whenever the liberated oxygen that reacts with the anodes, it forms carbon dioxide gas, and the anodes have to be changed because they will get oxidized every time electrolysis of alumina is done. So you need to understand this. Alumina is received by calcination of aluminum hydroxide. Aluminum hydroxide is received by leaching process through either Bayer's method or Hall's method. Bayer's method uses sodium hydroxide. Hall's method uses sodium carbonate. In both the scenarios, it's either grinded or powdered, and then it is added with the reagents, and then water is added and it is cooled down and filtered, and then you get alumina. You get aluminum hydroxide. And then from aluminum hydroxide, you get calcine it by heating it, and you get alumina. Once you have received alumina, you go through, you create an electrolysis tank of steel. You have a graphite lining, that is the cathode. You have graphite rods, that is the anode. You add 2 other elements like cryolite and fluorspar so that the melting point is lowered. Once you have lowered the melting point, because of the current that is passed, you will see aluminum getting deposited on the cathode. And because it is heavy, it will go to the bottom, and then it will be released from the bottom. Because electrolytic agent is heavier than is lighter than that, it will be at the top. Oxygen gets released at the anode, and because oxygen reacts with the graphite and creates carbon dioxide, the carbon dioxide is released at the anode and it gets oxidized. Anode rods will have to be replaced continuously in order to ensure that it doesn't get completely oxidized and stop reacting. Okay. Any questions? All right. Now, now coming to extraction of moderately reactive metals. So the metals that are in the middle of the series, like iron, zinc, lead, and copper, they are not as highly reactive as those at the top, like aluminum, and they are not as less reactive as like gold and platinum. Now they occur in sulfide salts or carbonate forms, and it's easier to obtain than sulfides or carbonates. It's easier to obtain from oxides than sulfides or carbonates. Therefore, sulfides are heated so that it can be churned into oxide. So you all know when something is combusted, oxygen gets added to it. So what they do is they take the sulfide ores and they heat it so that it can be turned into oxides. And this process is called roasting. Once it is heated, you get oxides. And now this is for sulfide ores. The carbonate ores are also heated with a less amount of air, and that is called calcination. Now the reactions that occur during roasting and calcination of zinc ore have been mentioned here. For roasting, you see there is enough amount of air available, and so the sulfide ore gets separated and you get a zinc oxide ore. In calcination, you have a zinc carbonate ore which has less amount of oxygen available during the roasting, and that's why you get zinc oxide and carbon dioxide. Okay, any questions so far?
No, sir.
All right, now coming to now once you get the oxide of these metals like the zinc oxide or iron oxide, then in order to obtain zinc, you use a reductant like carbon. So zinc oxide plus carbon will give you zinc, and carbon monoxide will get released. Apart from carbon, you can also use reactive metals such as sodium, calcium, aluminum to use that as a reducing agent. And in that, what happens is because these metals, the other metals are more reactive, they will displace the moderately reactive metal from its compound. So because they are more stronger, they will remove the less reactive metal from it. So what happens when magnesium oxide and aluminum is added, you get magnesium separated and alumina is created. But obviously you don't use that because aluminum is expensive. You will always use cheaper options, but this can be done. Okay. Now, whenever the heat that is absorbed is very large, so the metal is received in a molten state, and then um, iron oxide will react with aluminium to form iron and aluminium oxide. So again, even if you add Fe2O3, so you have ferrous oxide and you add aluminium to it, you get ferrous separately and alumina is separated. And of course, the ferrous will be in a molten state. Now, this has something called as the thermit welding. So they are saying, how do you basically weld rails? You already all have seen railway that rail ka patri, and if that has a break or if you want to join it, so how exactly will you weld it? So that's actually done by a thermit reaction. You have hot steel that is added, and the crucible device actually moves the hot steel within the rail, and you put in the mold on the top of it. So basically the weld is done with the help of molded iron. Okay. Now coming to the extraction of less reactive metals. So those metals that are less reactive, how are they extracted? So the metals that are at the bottom of the reactivity series are less reactive, and they are found free in free state in nature. So you have gold, silver, platinum. Because they are less reactive, they don't create sulfide ores or carbonate ores or salts with because they don't easily react. So copper is usually found with sulfur. And it can be easily obtained just by heating in air. So you just take a copper sulfate and just simply heat it and you will get copper. Gold and platinum you completely find separately. There is nothing on gold and copper. So you just need to clean it and wash it and you will have pure gold available. Okay. So now coming to refining of metal. So whenever you have a reduction process, you get some metal, but that is not completely pure. They are still have some impurities, and that impurities that needs to be separated, you use electrolysis method to separate it. We all know what is the electrolysis method. You use a reagent as a liquid, as an electrolytic liquid. You have cathode and anodes, and you know that current is passed through the cathode to the anode, and once the current gets passed, whatever impurities are will go and get stuck to the anode, and where through the cathode you can easily remove the metals. Okay. Now coming to something called as corrosion of metals. We've all seen corrosion. We've all seen cycle ka spokes getting rust colored. We've all seen metal that is exposed getting rust color, like our grill. If your grill is not painted with an oil paint, you will see the grill changing its color. Even if it is painted, after some time the paint chips off, then the iron gets rusted. We've all seen that happening. So why does that happen? So you've seen now iron articles, when they get rusted, it's a large financial loss because you cannot always clean rusting. Once the rusting has been done, then you don't have an alternative. You have to change that. So what exactly is that? I mean, how exactly does that happen, and what can we do to stop it? There are some examples given. We've all seen silver vessels that get blackened even at our homes. You have those small diyas and those small silver vessels that we use for the gods, and that actually gets blackened after time. We've also seen rusted chains and everything. Now, a lot of people don't know that, but the Statue of Liberty is actually cladded with copper. The whole cladding that is done on the statue is made up of copper, but it doesn't look like copper, does it? It looks green. And a lot of people thought that it's a green color. It's not green color. It was supposed to be copper. You know how copper looks, right? It looks goldish brown or something, but this looks green. And the reason why it looks green is because of the corrosion. And they don't have an capability to clean such a big thing continuously and ensure that there is no corrosion. So that is why it has turned itself into green. Now, iron reacts with air and a deposit of reduced substance is formed. This is called rust. Carbon dioxide also reacts with the copper vessel, and the copper loses its luster, and a greenish layer of copper carbonate, CuCO3, is formed. This is called patination of copper. Silver articles turn black because they turn into silver sulfide, and this happens because of the reaction of silver with hydrogen sulfide in air. And because of aluminium being oxidized, a very thin layer of aluminium oxide gets found to it. So how exactly you can prevent? For example, in iron, you can lower the rate by adding metals that isolates it from direct contact. So we all know that we can, when I had a cycle in my childhood, I used to go and get red oxide. Red oxide was basically an oxide that was added to the surface of the iron spokes, so that it doesn't get into contact with air. So you can put a layer of paint, oil, grease, varnish for that surface. So as they have clearly mentioned, even your grills are painted in oil paint so that it doesn't get rusted. Okay. Now these articles don't get protected permanently. This is only for a small time. As soon as there is a scratch on the paint surface or the paint chips away, and even if a very small surface comes into air, even below the surface of the paint, your metal will start rusting. So there is no foolproof method. The foolproof method is things like galvanizing. Now what happens in galvanizing? In galvanizing, a very thin layer of zinc is added. Like you've seen pins and everything. So these are galvanized so they don't get rusted. But even after a few seasons, the zinc layer will go away, and then again the iron will start rusting. The second method is tinning, in which molten tin is deposited on the metal. And now tinning is done mostly on our utensils that we use to eat. So if you have a copper or a brass layer, the greenish layer that gets added to it is poisonous, and it can spoil whatever food we keep it. That is why there is no food kept in our house in copper or even aluminium. You will cook food in aluminium, but you will always store it in your steel utensils. You can ask your mother, does she ever store food in copper or in aluminium utensils? She will always say no. Even if she uses it to cook, as soon as the food is cooked, she will store it in a steel utensil, or in the older times they used to store it in mud utensils, because even mud was better than copper. Now anodization is a better method, in which aluminium and copper is coated with a very thin and strong layer of oxides by the means of oxidizers, by the mean of electrolysis. So for this, copper or aluminium is used as an anode, and the oxide layer is very strong and it is very uniform because it's in a liquid form. So when aluminium is anodized, there is a layer of aluminium oxide, and it doesn't allow oxygen and water to interact. And this process protection can also be made much more stronger by adding the oxide layer during the anodization. You've seen those new cookers that you get, pressure cookers in the market, that are in various colors like green, black. Now those are anodized cookers. The older cookers that were made by aluminum or steel used to get rusted after some time, or used to have that thin layer of aluminum oxide. So rather than getting that, they actually anodize it, and the anodization is all over the surface. So utensils go for a longer time. Even some of our windows nowadays get anodized, which is more expensive than powder coating. Now coming to electroplating, in this, silver plated spoons, gold plated ornaments get electroplated. Now coming to alloying, so whenever you have metallic substances that are in the form of alloys, the main intention that is there is to decrease the intensity of the corrosion of metals. So the homogeneous mixture is mixed with a metal that has a certain proportion of an alloy. So bronze is an alloy that gets 90% copper and 10% tin. So bronze statues are the ones that are used for make statues because they don't get affected. Even stainless steel does not get stained because it's an alloy made up of iron, chromium, and carbon. A lot of alloys are also used to mint coins. So that is the reason why a lot of our utensils are made of stainless steel. And the reason why it's called stainless steel, because it doesn't get stain of air or water. It does not rust. And the reason is because it has chromium and carbon, which is a non-metal that is used to create the alloy. Okay. That ends this chapter. Do you have any questions, people? From this chapter, or any questions from anywhere is okay if you want to ask. All right, so I want to take another chapter today. Do you guys have any suggestions from anything that you want me to take today? No, nothing. Okay, so I'll choose a topic, maybe from science too. Once I have decided the topic, I'll send you the link. I have seen a lot of people keep on coming to the Zoom channel for no reason. I will send you the link when I come coming for the lecture. You don't have to come otherwise. Okay. I will never take a lecture without letting you guys know. So that should be all. Thank you very much, and I'll see you soon.